Hi everyone, welcome to the first video of 2017. This is also the first video in our Pathogens unit, so it's all about different types of pathogens. Remember that the vocab words that are important in this video are highlighted in yellow as you go throughout. In our cover photo here, you can see a zombie ant picture. We've talked about this a little bit before, but this is actually a pathogen, a pathogenic fungus that has infected and killed this ant. So before we talk about different types of pathogens, it's important to know what a disease is. This is any change that disturbs the normal functioning of the body systems, a little bit different from a disorder. Many diseases are considered to be infectious if they are caused by pathogens. However, not every disease is infectious. Last year in 7th grade, we talked about genetic diseases and you guys did presentations on them. Those are not infectious, they're inherited. And then, of course, pathogens are things that cause infectious diseases. This video is going to cover the 5 different types of pathogens that lead to infectious diseases. They are viruses, bacteria, fungi, protists, and parasites. Hopefully some of these words are looking familiar from last year. All right, hold up, because before we go any further, we need to do a quick review of a few things that we learned in 7th grade. You might remember last year we did a project called Alive or Nah, where you chose 2 things and you explained why one was alive and why the other wasn't. And there are lots of reasons we learned about for why things are alive, like they're made of cells, they can reproduce on their own, they need energy, they follow a life cycle, they eventually die, and they grow and adapt to their environment. We also learned about the difference between unicellular and multicellular organisms. So uni means one cell. This is a bacteria. I picked this because it looks really similar to this worm, but this is only one cell, where this is many, so many. Of course, we are multicellular organisms because we're made of many cells, trillions. All right, now that we've had that quick review, let's move on to talking about viruses. What's so important about viruses and why we just reviewed Alive or Nah is because viruses are non-living. This can get confusing because they do have DNA, which we consider to be a part of living things because it's genetic material. They're made of only DNA and proteins, nothing else. So, of course, we're made of carbohydrates and lipids and proteins and DNA and water and a whole lot of things that these viruses are not. Viruses also need a host cell to reproduce. The host cell is the cell that the virus infects. And what viruses actually do is they go into the cell, they take over the cell, and they use the cell's parts to make more viruses. And the viruses reproduce, and then eventually break out of the host cell, which kills the host cell, and then go on to infect more cells. So this is why viral infections can spread really fast in your body and can come on really quickly because they're exploding out of your cells, they're killing your cells, and there's millions of them that are moving all around. Some viruses can actually be dormant inside your cells for a really long time, and then they are eventually somehow triggered to start this reproducing cycle. The virus reproduction cycle is called the lytic cycle, or if it's dormant, it's called lysogenic. Viruses cause a whole lot of infectious diseases in humans and also in animals and plants. They can range in symptoms from a regular common cold, that's a virus, all the way to Ebola, which of course is very deadly. There are also a lot of different types of viruses. So the one that you saw on the other slide is a virus, and so is this one. They look very different, but they're both viruses, and they are both not alive. Just to be clear, the reason they're not alive is because they are unable to reproduce on their own. They have to have a host in order to reproduce. All right, pathogen number 2 is bacteria. Bacteria are alive. So only viruses are pathogens that are not alive. Bacteria are prokaryotic, so hopefully you remember that means they do not have a nucleus. They're very, very small cells because they are prokaryotic. They do have things like cell membranes, cell walls, ribosomes. Some of them have a really strong capsule around their cell wall that helps protect them. And they have ways that they can camouflage themselves in your body from your immune cells. Bacteria also can often live in a lot of interesting places. These are called extremophiles, things that can do this. Bacteria can even live at the very bottom of the ocean, where almost nothing else can live. Scientists use the shape of bacteria to classify them. You can see the symbol here. This like strange looking U is the symbol for micro. So these are smaller than millimeters, really, really small. They're spiral shaped, rod shaped, and round shaped. And they can also come in singles, or they can come kind of hooked together like this, or like a double rod. Several different ways that they can show up. Bacteria can also cause some super nasty infections, strep throat, which you probably have had before, all the way up to the bubonic plague was caused by a bacteria, and tuberculosis. This is the tuberculosis bacteria in the background. Kind of looks like hot dogs, but it's actually really, really small and really, really nasty. As a side note, something to remember while we're talking about these things is that not all bacteria are pathogens. Some of them are really helpful. You actually have a ton of bacteria that lives inside your gut. 2 pounds of your body weight is made up of bacteria. They can also be used to clean up oil after an oil spill, and they are used to make nitrogen usable for plants. So don't hate bacteria. There's reasons to love them. Okay, pathogen number 3, fungi. Fungi, you can also say fungi, both are acceptable, are eukaryotic organisms. They are heterotrophs, which you might remember means that they eat something else. There are 2 types of things, autotrophs and heterotrophs. Autotrophs can make their own food, those are the plants. Heterotrophs have to eat something else. Most fungi are multicellular, but not all of them. Something cool about them is that they can change whether they reproduce sexually or asexually, depending on the environment that's surrounding them. Like bacteria and viruses, fungi can be pretty nasty pathogens. They infect plants a lot, which of course are our food sources. Mold spores can cause allergies. Black mold, fungal meningitis is bad news. The zombie ant fungus is a fungus. It's called cordyceps. And of course, we know the story of that one. Terrible fungus that changes the behavior of ants and eventually eats their brain and kills them. Something important to know about fungi is that they're still very unexplored, and scientists are discovering new species of them every day. They're an area that science hasn't really expanded that much into, and there's a lot to learn about them still. All right, protists. We talked about protists last year. These were the amoebas, euglena, paramecia, all those guys that live in water. They are usually single-celled and eukaryotic, so they do have a nucleus. Some of them are multicellular, but not many. The slime mold we talked about last year was multicellular. Protists can be pathogens. Amoebas are really dangerous if you get them in your system. A disease called Giardia is really bad, leads to terrible diarrhea. And then malaria is a really terrible parasite-caused disease. This is a picture of the malaria protist. And finally, parasites. There are lots of different types of parasites. You could even consider a virus to be like a parasite because it uses the host cell. There are also animal parasites. Things like tapeworms are parasites that lead to infectious disease. They can be protists, they can be animals, lots of different types, but basically what you need to know is that they feed off of their host and cause their host to become sick. All right, that's it for this time. We're going to learn a lot more about pathogens, diseases, and health in the next couple of weeks. Bye for now.